There we go. Yeah, so hey, thanks for coming and listening and coming and having a yarn. Yeah, so as Lara was telling you, she was telling you a bit about me. I don't know where to start. I'll start at the start. I was born in 1979, and I come from, like, I identify strongly as Aboriginal, because that's the community I grew up in. But I'm also from another couple of mobs. So my father's Tongan, and my great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather are South Sea Islanders. So I've got this big, rich cultural mix that I'm so glad to have. And it's been interesting growing up and seeing the differences, because you find out all the differences in all the cultures. There's a lot of similarities, but seeing the distinct differences, and it makes you laugh sometimes when you sit in between the three worlds and talk about stuff, just the way that people interact with each other in the three different communities. So 79 I was born. My dad was a professional boxer. My mum was, she was a nurse when she was younger, so she was brought up in Cherbourg and had to get an exemption letter to go out of Cherbourg to work and stuff like that. And growing up in the Aboriginal community, what really struck me, being older now and looking back at it, my mum's got all this paperwork, all her paperwork from the government. Everything she did, everything she went, everywhere she went, every time my grandparents would sneak out of Cherbourg and run back up to Harvey Bay to visit all the family, it was all there, documented everything. So that really spun me out. I got, growing up, we had not much money, and because I couldn't identify, I don't know, when I was younger, when I was in about grade 1, I started doing traditional dance. So that gave me that strong link to a community. Now those dances weren't from my community, but I had that link. Somebody planted a seed, so that when I got older, I would want to find out more. As I got a bit older, having no money, and struggling to identify, because I was the only Aboriginal kid at a lot of the schools that I went to, I got into graffiti at a very young age, like 10 or 11, I got into graffiti. And it was mainly low socioeconomic area kids that were involved in it, because poverty doesn't discriminate. Poverty's everywhere. So, I was hanging out with non-Indigenous kids, like white Australian kids, Albanian kids, Vietnamese kids, Italian, you name it, Aboriginal, Torres, Strait Islander. We were all there in one boat. We all had no money. So we got into graffiti, and then crime. I noticed when I got older, crime snuck in, because if you come from a dysfunctional area or a dysfunctional family, nobody's got any money. So what do? You have to do crime, and it's always the kids, because the parents were largely dysfunctional to a certain extent. There was a lot of love, but there was a lot of dysfunction in terms of money. Monetary issues. So what would happen is these young people would all sort of get together, and I noticed as I got older, all my role models were going to jail. All my role models were starting to use hard drugs. All my role models were smoking dope every single day, and these were my role models. And I think if I didn't have a couple of key specific things happen throughout my life where people planted seeds, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I don't regret living through a lot of the stuff that I lived through, because if I hadn't, it wouldn't have fired me up as much as it has to do the things that I do now. I just don't stop, and my brain just ticks all night, every night. I'm thinking about new ways of working within the community, things to bring other young blackfellas up in the community, and to also get the stories. So I want to try to get mainstream Australia to embrace Aboriginal culture as their own. As our own, it's ours. It's a history. Like, we're a part. We started out the history 50,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, and now I don't think Australia quite gets it, that they're a part of this rich culture today. Contemporary Australia, all of us, black, white, Sudanese, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, whatever, we're all a part of that rich, long culture. So I think we need to look at ways of, I like to try to, when I work, look at ways of how to identify ways that we can sort of bring people into the community and say, hey, look, it's not as scary as you think. It's not all, everything that you see on mainstream media isn't exactly what's happening. You know, there's a lot of good stuff that happens, but you know, 2% of the time you might see that on mainstream media. So I got to the age of about 16, and by then a couple of mates had died, stolen cars, just watched people have heroin overdoses in front of me and stuff like that. I got to about 18 and I thought, I took a year off. I thought, oh no, I just want to quit school. I think it was about grade 10. And that whole year off school scared the crap out of me. Like I was living it every day. I was just living, and I was just living in this downward spiral, and I was watching everybody around me. I was thinking, oh no, I can't do this. The next year came, the 12 months was up, and I said to my mum by that time had moved, split up with my father. I said, I'm going to go back to school. So I went back to school, and all I went for was the culture, the dance, to play sport, and English. Like I was good at writing, I was good at literacy, so I could write a story really well, and I would get all right marks, and that was the only thing. Then maths, I'd just skip the class. You know, every other class, the teachers would just look at me like, oh, here he is, this one. And I remember, like, I ended up working at that high school later on in life, and I was sitting around the table and said, oh, where's those certificates? You know, the ones we give to the kids that don't do anything? And I was like, oh, wait, and they passed the certificate across the table. I looked, and I just went, oh, I've got the same one at home from the 90s, from 1996. And I was like, oh, shame. So I was, so you hear the conversations and stuff, and everyone's like, oh no, this is what, I don't think they had too many high expectations about what I was going to be when I got older. So then by the time, so I got through to grade 12, barely just made it, got this gammon certificate. And gammon, in case you don't know what gammon means a few different things. Hey, so it could mean fake, it could mean gammon, like, oh, who made this tea? It's gammon. You know, it's yucky, or you could be like, dinosaur, gammon, it's a joke, you know, there's a couple of different meanings. Anyway, so I got this gammon certificate, grade 12, and then I thought, I looked around, and there's some key people when I was about 16. Paul Kelly's brother was a youth worker. He came out to Inala, and I was about 13. He planted a seed. He came out to Inala, he was a youth worker in Inala. He took a bunch of us Inala boys, the most hardcore, burn down, you know, go on a camp, burn down a cabin kids that you could get, like this dysfunctional kids. Took us on a camp all the way up to Cairns. We went up there, but the whole time, this bloke, when I look back at it, he knew exactly what he was doing, and I find that now that I'm older, I do the exact same thing when I'm talking with young people now, and even with the programs that I work on, I always try to include this seed planting, I call it seed planting. So he would have these strategic conversations around, so what are you gonna be when you grow up? Who's your big role model? Yeah, my cousin Gazzy, you know, he's got a shotgun and he goes and does robberies. And it's like, oh yeah, that's good. So where's he now? You know, it's like, oh, he's in jail. What do you think happens in jail? Oh, they have fun, they get food, 3 meals a day, they watch TV, they do this, they do that. So you go, okay, so what do you think about living in a cell? Not seeing anybody else. Occasionally some people might visit you, but just having the same people to look at and talk to for a number of years. And he would say little things like that, but he would talk to other people, you know, talk to all these kids on the camp and say, what, you could be a doctor, you're crazy, you could be a doctor, I can't believe you do that. Oh, I'm not good at school. It's like, but he would spot things like there's one kid who's really, he said he was, you know, he said, oh no, I got street smarts. And he could buy all these drugs and sell them and make a profit. And he said, look, why are you doing that? What? Do you know you're really good at maths? And he goes, you don't know anything about maths, well, he goes, you're talking about your whole drug life. you're really great at maths and possibly marketing. What are you doing with yourself? What are you doing with yourself? So he was planting these seeds in all of us at a young age. And then went on the camp. Anyway, so got to 18, I thought, I've got to get out of this, right? And there's no other way I'm going to get out. And there was this police officer, and he'd always pull me up. And he'd always raid our house, actually. He did as a detective. And every time they come there, there'd be like 12 empty beds, because, you know, blackfellas, in our community, there's blackfellas, whitefellas, whoever, anybody would come around and just sleep over. And I'd wake up. A couple of times I woke up, oh, what's going on? All these police stand there, getting cracked in the face. I said, what's going on? Oh, well, we're going to either arrest your dad or you, because there's some stolen goods here. I'm like, well, do you think I'll be laying here in bed if I knew you were coming? Don't you think I'll be out the window? It happened a couple of times, you know. So don't you think I'll be out the window gone if I was doing anything? Like I said, I'm seeing all this stuff happen. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm going and doing voluntary work. I was doing voluntary work for Vinnie's and Mission Australia. Worked in the store. Even when I was working in the store, the dudes that I was hanging around with from graffiti crews such and just negative people I was hanging around with, like, oh, what are you doing in the store? Can we come and rob the place? No way! No, I'm not telling you where I work. No, go away. No, I don't want to know how to just get away from me. And I did that for a year. Almost a year. I just pushed and I just persisted. And I think if I hadn't had key people from all different races plant seeds in my life with the culture, like uncles with culture, my older brothers with culture, youth workers, you know, all sorts of stuff. Youth workers at Indigenous youth organisations and then mainstream youth organisations, I think I would definitely be here on the wrong path. So I tried out for a job. I was 19, I turned 19, I'd been doing a year of voluntary work, and I went for this job. It's an education support officer, Indigenous education support officer. And I rocked up for them. I don't even know how I got an interview. I must have answered some of the questions. Luckily I was good at literacy. So I got this interview, and I went in, and they basically said, look, there's 8 people sitting out there, 5 of them have university degrees, the other 3 have worked in education for over 10 years. What could you possibly do for us or bring to the job that all these people out here that are overqualified for the job are going to bring to this job? And I just put it on. I just said, look, for me, this isn't about a job. I said, I've experienced some hard out stuff throughout my life. And I went into a little bit of detail. I said, so for me to come to work every day, I said, maybe for these guys, it's about an income. It's about, a stable job, full-time work or whatever. I said, for me, I'm going to change people's lives. I've had my life changed in increments over the last few years, and I'm just trying to get away from what I'm living in. And if you gave me the job, out of all these guys, every day I would put in 150%. I would come to work and I'd just be switched on. You put me through any training, I'll do the training, I don't care. I will do whatever it takes to succeed. And I said, and you look back in 5-10 years time and be amazed at what I've done. I think they're amazed now because they would see me. I'm on TV everywhere, SBS occasionally, ABC, documentaries. I'm in 4 exhibits now. I'll be in 2 here, 1 here, 1 in the museum, 2 over at Goma over the next 3 or 4 months. So I think they get the picture that I was serious. I was dead serious about taking on board this responsibility. And then what I loved about that job was I got to link in with all these community members, and it was like the Outer Archdiocese region of Catholic education. So it was, it was crazy. It was just, I got to meet all these different families that I knew, mob who knew mob or were married into them. And the biggest thing for me was to be able to talk to parents and demystify the whole school thing, what was going on at the school, why it was important that the kids had to go to school, and then getting through the cultural stuff, like somebody dies in one of our families, I'm not coming to school for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm gone. I'm up there where my family's from, with the family. We're grieving. So there's a whole big cultural divide that I got to work on in that work. And then I found a bit of a passion, through working in that line of work, I found a bit of a passion for youth work. I got into youth work and I was an outreach worker, and I did that for about 3 years, working with street kids all around Brisbane, and doing outreach and going in needle syringe exchange program and stuff like that. And yeah, saw some horrific stuff, and yeah, there was a big moment where something happened just over near the bridge that changed my life, and I stepped out of youth work for a year because of it, and then got into youth arts. But in the meantime, like just to keep busy, I was also doing hip hop workshops because I figured, oh, I've got this talent, why don't I start using it? So about 2003, I started doing hip hop workshops with kids, and then I noticed when I was doing it with Indigenous kids, I could relate to them a little bit more. So then I started to get a passion for that. So I started just travelling up to communities. So I've been all up, the Cape, all Palm, everywhere, Orisha, mainly regional, a couple of remote places, doing hip hop workshops. And I noticed there was a big similarity in hip hop because I don't know, a lot of people go, oh, why do you do hip hop? You got your own culture. I'm like, yeah, I'm strong with that, with my culture, but we've adapted. Like, we're no longer the hardcore nomadic, nomadic warrior, hunter-gatherer, although we do it, and a lot of our cousins do it, because a lot of cousins still live remote, but that's not their full-time thing. They've adapted, just like everybody else, just like the world around, like we've all adapted. None of us were born with computers in our hands, but we all still like to use it. So, same with Murray's. And I got a bit lost there. Where was I going? Where was I going with that? Right there. What was I talking about?
Hip-hop workshops.
Hip-hop workshops, that's right. And I noticed, over the years that I've worked in hip-hop with Indigenous kids in hip-hop, and people have interviewed me when I'm doing music interviews and stuff, hey, you do workshops, don't you? What are some of the big things that, why do you think it's so popular in Indigenous communities? And the 4 things I noticed, there's 4 elements to hip-hop. There's the bad one, graffiti. Then there's DJing, MCing, and breakdancing. And over the years, I just formulated this thing in my head. I was like, wow, now I know why it works. And I always talk about it now. With Murray kids, in Aboriginal culture, so there's hip-hops here. So in hip-hop you have the DJ, well we have a ditch player. Hip-hop you've got an MC, we've got a songman or songwoman. You've got breakdancing, we've got shakeling. And then there's graffiti, we've got the oldest graffiti in the world. Out in these caves, So, and I think, to me, that's why I think Indigenous kids are able to just slide straight into it and adapt to hip-hop in particular, because it's got the rhythm, it's all about rhythm and talking about personal experiences. The roots of hip-hop were, it was a movement. It was a movement of young black people in the Bronx, in Brooklyn and Bronx, and in New York. So I was able to, identify with that a little bit more. And growing up too, there weren't too many, there was never like positive stuff on TV or never anything about blackfellas on mainstream television. But there was blackfellas, but they were doing rap. And so I was looking at that, and I was like, oh, well, I grew up pretty crazy. And I actually know someone. The only thing we didn't have was guns and crack. So I was able to relate to it, and then I got into it and thought, oh yeah, cool, that's cool. But I think another key thing was those seeds. So with the dance stuff, with the culture, people would come out to schools when I was growing up, and then as I got older in the mid-80s, my older brothers started their own dance group, and so they had to talk to their elders, and they got as much language as they could. And at the time, a lot of anthropologists have documented a lot of language around the country, and so they had to get a grant. They got all the dreaming stories of their area, them Manjali, Yugamir. So they got all the stories of all the old people, and then and some of the languages, much languages that they could off everybody that was around, and then they got a grant from the government, and they went down to Canberra, and just, you know, the fisheye thing, you know, sit there and scroll through all the, I forget what they call it, fish or something, microfiche. And they got all the language and did all the photocopying and stuff, and then took it back and said to the elders, you know this word, you know that word, how do you say it? And they go, oh, yeah, well, you know, they were able to elaborate a bit on the more. So then they started on that, and that was, you know, that's language and cultural preservation in a nutshell. So watching that happen, being a kid and watching that all happen, I really grabbed onto that. So I started doing, when we were in high school, we all danced. So we danced for some big events, and like in stadiums and stuff all throughout high school. And then after high school, it just continued, and we became little cultural leaders. You know, these guys, same guys that would sing and play didge at schools. After school, people would say, hey, I remember you from, you went to that school. You guys want a gig? Come and play a gig? And okay, yeah, cool. Rally up all the friends or as many people as we could to dance. But today what I do is, it's a bit scary that our language and our customs aren't cool enough for the young people to want to pick up. So, and I get scared that I'm really afraid that it's going to get lost. And I used to talk about it as in, I'd say, oh look bro, this is what I'm doing, learning my language and learning everything I can about my three sides of the Aboriginal side of my family, because it's nearly dead. And a bloke, a Yolngu fella, he said to me, oh, it's not dead, it's asleep. And he said, you're just waking it up, and people like yourself are waking it up. So there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of old people that know about all these things. You don't ask. If you don't ask, you don't receive. And that's how old people work. So it's like, and I noticed that I just worked it out over years. So I'm just a very inquisitive person, so I'll ask a lot of questions, and yeah, I just want to work over at Zilmi at the moment. Like I work with the men's group, Budget Yarnin. So I've got about 35 kids that come and I teach dance to and teach language, bits and pieces of language. We do up little not work booklets, but we'll write it up on the board and just teach them and sort of give them a little bit of homework and stuff like that. And that just came about because we were doing it over at just a mate of mine said, oh, what are we going to do? Who's going to fund it? I said, you don't need funding. If everybody waits around for funding, it'll be gone. You know, you wait for years and years. And I said, well, we'll put in some applications for something. But in the meantime, let's just go and do it. So we started doing it and just teaching kids dance and then the songs, and that's how they learn the language. And then started doing it at Kaperaway, and then got invited into Musgrave to the embassy, and we did that a couple of weeks, two or 3 weeks in a row. And then I just put on a barbecue. Like, I work full time, I can afford to sling in $20 for some sausages and just own money. And then we started doing it over at Zilmia, and then this men's group noticed what we were doing and said, hey, would you guys come and do something with us, and we will find some funding for you. So we just did it, and then yeah, suddenly they found some funding, and we're doing now, and the kids are performing around the place. 1st of June, I think it is, we'll have like about 30 kids performing at half time at the Reds game at whatever that rugby union park is. I'm bad. I follow league. So Ballymore, Ballymore. Yeah, so they will be there, and so giving them some crazy opportunities. And then to be able to work on the Clancestry closing was, that was a whole other level. Like all that night I was walking around, and I just was on the verge of just crying. I've seen so many people. People were walking up to me crying, aunties, uncles, other dancers and stuff going, oh, right, we've never been anything this big. And to see all of us come together with all our little kids, all the old people coming to watch, this is something special, and that'll always stick in my head, that first year. Now I'm just glad they want to do it every year, so we're working on it again for next year. But it was, just getting shivers. Like I learned from a very young age kukiology, Kwanji dances off my older brothers through my cousins. One of my aunties married into that side of the family, up into Kwanji mob, kukiology, and that's who my mum was named after. So then, lucky I got a mic. So I learned that stuff from a very young age, and then that night at Clan Sister, I'm sitting there, I've got my two sons with me, one's painted up, the other fella never wants to get painted up, but he'll just wear a headdress, and if any ochre touches him, he starts crying. So even if I'm in the middle of singing, he'll come up, grab the clapstick like, and scream and hold on. I'm like, oh no. But this night he was really good. He just sat there, had his headdress on, had his clapsticks, and I just got really emotional. And then I saw kukiology now mob come out and get Angie dances, and the dances that they were doing, and two of them I remember from being a kid and just dancing them all throughout high school, dancing them up until I was a man, and just thinking, wow, my kids get to see this, get to live this. This is we're creating their good old days. Like, I can't believe it's at a point now, because it almost died out here in southeast Queensland dance, and then it took the Brady mob now to come down and reinvigorate the passion within the community for everybody to want to find out their language and then dance and their paint up and the ceremonies and stuff like that, and talk to, it sparked people who want to talk to older people and find out this information. And then to sit there and then watch those dances, and there was one dance in particular, old man dance, and this guy who actually sparked off my career in hip hop, he was acting as an old man, Marlon, and he's there just stomping around, and everybody went nuts in the thing, and I just teared up, and I looked around and I was like, oh man, this is mad. My hairs just stood up, and I got really up. Even now, like I couldn't believe I was sitting there witnessing this whole thing happening, and I thought, what it's doing for not only the older guys, the older fellas, the elders, and then for our generation, and then for the younger generation. I just thought, this is an amazing experience, and it's just changing everybody's life. And since then we've talked to a lot of elders and people in the community and young fellas, and they were like, when's the next one? Yeah, we're gonna. I didn't dance this year, but I was watching my mom. I want to get up with her next year. I'm like, yeah, we'll make sure, because there's a whole process leading up to it. You can't just rock up on the day. So that was a highlight of my life, basically. Like I won awards and stuff, Queensland Music Awards, and won a grant off a competition grant through John Butler and stuff. But that was the highlight. That was like the pinnacle of everything. Just to see it in that setting, big bright light, spotlight, circle, proper ceremony, with some theatrics chucked in there, and then just seeing all everything and hearing the stories of what kids and what people and what whole communities have got out of it was amazing. I'm so glad that I got to be a part of it. And I think, somebody said to me, brothers, if you weren't putting this together, it wouldn't have happened. And I started thinking about it. I said, that's where everything that's why I always feel grateful that I've had this opportunity to live through what I've lived through. Community have seen it, parts of the community have seen where I came from, and then to watch me over the years and watch me working with the kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and then to be able to be put in a position where I can coordinate something like that it gave me a buzz. It was also just feel really humbled that I was able to be the person that got to do it. Yeah. What else is there? I'm trying to think. I might open up for some questions. I'll be prepared for really long answers because I love to talk. A cup of tea, I have a nice warm cup of tea, so I will. Got 2 kids, married, live on the north side. If you don't live on the north side, you probably don't know what you're missing out on. It's really nice on the north side. Anyone want to ask any questions or just talk about anything? Have you on?
Do you ever come to the south side?
Yeah, okay, it's outside every now and again, yeah. Small doses, that's alright with small doses. Yeah, but nah, get
Do you do school visits?
Yeah. Do occasional school visits and NAIDOC, around NAIDOC and Reconciliation Week gets a bit busy. Yeah. Especially with the dance group and then doing talks and stuff. Yeah. We do that kind of thing. Was there anything that sort of resonated with anyone or stood out that you guys want to talk about a bit more in depth or anything like that?
So when you were halfway through telling the story, like you're in bed, your dad's in bed, and police come and break your house, and you're there, like, what do you say? How do you stand up?
Yeah, they said, oh, well look, if you don't own up to it, we're just going to take your dad. I said, own up to what? I was like, it happened a few times, 2 or 3 times, until this detective, he worked out what was going on. He goes, look mate, seem like a nice bloke. We're not going to charge you for any of this stuff, but you need to get out of this situation. And he planted a seed, so he would say, you're going to end up, like, because he was watching our whole
So it was just one guy.
crew of friends. Yeah. And he watched our whole crew of friends fall apart because of drugs, and he got to watch it from the outside, but he had his personal connection to us because he was always like, oh, you're under arrest, buddy, come on down to the watch house. So yeah, I think, and that was on the north side, but I lived between there and south side in Anala. A lot of my cousins and mates and everything. Yeah, so it was terrifying. Like it was, I look back at it, and sometimes when I have to talk about it, it just brings up all this weird emotion. I think, oh, I can't believe I was there. And I talked to one of my cousins once, actually. He said to me, look, bro, he goes, because he's, a lot of my mates, cousins that are in jail now, or heroin addicts now, or have died, or, just in a cycle of being in and out of jail. And my cousin said to me once, he goes, Buzz, I see what you're doing with the rap. And if I was able to talk about things the way you could talk about things, because I wouldn't be in jail. And he said, if I had some way of getting out this anger and frustration, I'd be in jail. I wouldn't be in jail. And I thought, yeah, cool. And then that just sparked me. That fired me up, and I thought, you know what? I want to be a visible role model. I don't want to sort of sit around. So I just pulled my thumb out, went for a couple of grants, won this award, and then from then it's just been about, constantly think, like the first release, even the first EP that we brought out, this song was on dual rotation on Triple J. They were playing it on every segment of the day for like 3 months. And it got on a Qantas International in-flight radio, and it was about my racist neighbour. He said, oh, come over for a beer, years ago, like these young blokes. He said, come over for a beer. I was sitting there and he goes, oh, you're all right. Well, those other fellas, mate, and he just, the words that were coming out of his mouth. And I just was like, oh. And I was explaining to him, I said, bro, if this was, 10 years ago, brother, I said, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Right now, you'd be in a lot of trouble. I'm just telling you that. And now I'm going to go home, I'm going to write a song about you. And then I did, and I went home and wrote this song. This verse in the song is about Bloke Next Door. And it was on Qantas International in-flight radio. It's been on Virgin International in-flight radio. They were pumping it on Qantas for 3 months. So I had friends flying back from Malaysia and stuff like that. Bro, I think I just heard your voice on a song on the radio on the plane. I said, yeah, you did. So for me, yeah, it's a way of it's like what do you call it? It's a coping mechanism because I get to talk about it. Yeah, but I get to write. I think now that the older I get, it's more confrontational stuff to how do I get the story across where people want to listen to it and not feel bad about it, or not bad, like I'm not saying bad, but how do I get it across to people without being too preachy or too in their face and scaring them off, and then making that music that we make, try to make it accessible to like all ages. Like we play up at Woodford Folk Festival, and we get people of all ages, like literally all ages rock up. Not all ages, 15 teenagers up to like 60, 70-year-olds, and they always come up. The older people always come up and go, you know, I hate rap crap, but I love what you're doing. Yeah, because I grew up on music, grew up on everything, so we try to incorporate as much as we can other different styles and genres into the music. Yeah.
Can you say the verse? Can you say?
Yeah, okay. It's hey boys and girls. Hey boys and girls, here's a bit about me. Fred Leone, nowadays known as Rival MC. Back in the day, growing up, I got teased just because could never put a finger on just what it was. Till I was told one day it was because of my skin. I mean, you're alright, but there's others, they're lazy, smelly and whinge. I cringed, thinking I should knock this fella's block off. Kept my composure, I just decided to laugh it off. Hypothetically, if I hit him, man, what would it prove? I'd be arrested in a watch house with no lace in my shoes, kicking myself because he's walking free and I'm in a cell, telling the story till my grandkids still angry as hell. Well, the message of the story, I guess it's loud and clear. It hurts to be treated as a second-class citizen up in here, so treat people as you would want them to treat you. And remember, if it gets too much, we'll laugh it off with you. So, and that was it, just saying, wow. And that was the verse, and that verse. And then my mate did a verse, and that song just went everywhere. You know, people downloading one download in China, and a couple of, a few people in America and UK and stuff. Yeah. Any other?
What is the future?
Yeah, the future. So the future.
Big question on that.
Yeah. For me, I think I want to do a lot more. Stuff like working on Clancy Street, like I want to do a lot more hands-on things, like things that incorporate the contemporary with the traditional, sort of fuse the two, that are, in a way, extensions of a dreaming story or whatever. Like it's an extension of the history to show people this is where we've come from. And we've moved into this space, and now how do we all come together in this space and move forward into the future? I think a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be working on is around that, and music, a lot of, there's a lot of Indigenous musicians out there, and I think the main thing I want to work on, the main two things is, trying to change people's perceptions and perspectives on, instead of, like a lot of people talk to me, a lot of younger dudes always talk to me like when I've worked with people and stuff, they're like, oh yeah, well you guys get you know, like more money and you know, with your app study, and you get extra points for uni and stuff. Like who told you that? Oh, my mate. I'm like, is your mate Aboriginal? Oh no, but he's got a mate, and the mate's friend is, and so I think the more important thing is to, like, with the programs that I'm going to be working on and projects, is to turn them into more conversational things like this. Like, to me, this is reconciliation. You know what I mean? Not sitting around having a conversation and just talking to each other. Not like you can plan as much as you want, but unless there's like authentic dialogue and back and forth conversation about issues that are going on, and hearing people's stories firsthand instead of going, oh, well, this is my picture of Aboriginal Australia because that's what I saw on the news, and then I talked to my mate, and he worked once in the 80s, he worked in an Aboriginal community for a week, and he knows all about it, you know, like that. So if we can, you know, I had one mate, and I've got family on Palm, and I've been up to Palm a few times, Palm Island. I had a mate turn around to me at a barbecue, I hadn't seen him in years, and said, yeah man, and you know about the cannibals, on Palm Island. I was like, I won't say anything. What about the cannibals? Yeah, well, they were still like cannibals in the 80s and stuff. So my mate was working there, And he was working there in the mid-90s, and this bloke told him this, and I said, "You sure he wasn't pulling his leg?" And then he said, "No, no, no." And then he started telling me the ins and outs of what was just his perception of this whole community and how it had broken down and this and that. And I was like, "Well, I was up there." And then I turned around and said, "I was up there like last year." It's like, been a couple of years after the riots, and I didn't see that. And I went with a couple of non-Indigenous people, and they weren't scared for their life, and we're actually having quite a lot of fun doing hip-hop workshops and just talking to people like people. I think the more projects that sort of can take our culture, but at the same time spark up conversation around it. Like I liked with Clan Ancestry, there's a whole string. There was like 3 or 4 conversations happening around what was happening at Woodridge. It's another thing about am I black enough? There's a whole lot of stuff. And I think if we can pose it more as drawing in the wider community to come and ask these questions directly and engage, then I think that's what I'll be working on in the future. That and making the music industry so that every other week there's a Yotha Yindi, every other week there's a Jessica Malroy. So it's just, trying to raise the bar on and build not just the artist. There's a lot done around the artist from arts. The arts perspective, there's a lot done for the artist, but there's not enough. Pardon me. Not enough or not much at all development around the whole sector. Like, what's the thing that's gonna, for example, if I get a publicist and I'm going to play in Melbourne and the publicist doesn't know anything about the Aboriginal community, and the first time I go there, I send out an email to all the Aboriginal organisations and we get 150, 200 people rock out, and then when I go back and I pay this is just an example, and I pay a non-Indigenous publicist to do the job for me, and they splash all the stuff in magazines and stuff, but they don't hit their grassroots. And then I'll get there and there's like 10 people the year after. It's like, that's what I want to build on. Not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and even South Sea Islander artists, but the industry around it, the who's doing their marketing. So is it, other blackfellas have that intimate knowledge of community. So why not, if there's somebody's good at marketing, get them into marketing, get them into publicity, get them into music management, and build a whole sector around it. That's another. Yeah.
When you were younger, did you think that you were going to get to be doing this?
I literally thought I would be dead by the time I was 20. I thought I was going to be, I didn't think I was going to be doing all the crazy things that I've been doing lately. Yeah, I thought I was going to be dead. That was, and it's scary, but for a lot of young Indigenous kids, it's not, in that, say if they're in that same scenario that I was in growing up, there's not a lot of, you can't see much of the future. The things you see around you are, not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. So that's what I thought. I thought I was going to be dead. I literally thought I would be dead. But I'm not, and I'm here. Yeah.
Did you have any music training?
No. Actually, no, I did. In primary school, I was taught how to sing. So how I talk now is really bad, and I've got like bilateral sulcus from bad use of my voice. When I was a teenager, just screaming and not warming up my voice, and just yelling at family, and I'm not yelling at my mate's family, and talking, and you wouldn't talk, you just yell. Pass me the remote! Go. And all that stuff. What it did is, I've got like creases on my vocal folds, straight down the length of both vocal folds, called bilateral sulcus. So it makes my voice really hard. And then because of that, and the bad technique over the years, my throat muscles have overdeveloped. so it's really tight. So the only time when my voice isn't sore is I have to talk like, who's that guy? Did I do that? Steve Urkel. I've seen it. I see it in those throat specialists, and they said the only way it's gonna get better is if you talk like that, and you have to project your voice up like that. But I don't want to talk like that. I've tried it. I did it for a couple of months. It's just embarrassing, people. Hey. It's not with you, right? No, nothing. No, I see a voice specialist, and they tell me I have to speak like this, and that feels really comfortable. Like it feels really good to talk like that. But I just can't. I have to talk like this, and it hurts. But it's bad. I have to. But yeah, grade 1 through to 7. Yeah, I was singing in choirs, and then even in high school, like I sang in a cappella groups. So we'd get together and it'd be like, oh, man, I'm sick of this. And me and mates, and we'd just go, okay, let's put together like we weren't aimed for more or anything, like aimed for more in the cabinet there, you see the display over there, but we weren't aimed for more, but we could all sing, like we'd always sing and find birthday parties to play at, and somebody would give us $100 or something, or sing at other schools, and blue light discos and stuff like that. I think yeah, music pretty much saved my life. If I didn't get into music and doing all these things with music, to do with music and culture, yeah, I definitely wouldn't be here today.